I'd like to start with our land acknowledgement. The West Hollywood City Council acknowledges that the land on which we gather and that is currently known as the City of West Hollywood is the occupied, unceded, seized territory of the Gabrielino Tongva and Gabrielino Kizh people. I would like to call this regularly scheduled West Hollywood Planning Commission meeting to order. It is Thursday, March 7, 2024, and the time is 6:33. Lynn Hoopengarner, do you mind leading us in the pledge tonight? Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And tonight we have a special event, administer the oath of office to our new planning commissioner.
Yes, we have Councilmember Meister who will be doing, and
Good evening, commissioners. Good evening, all in attendance. Ms. Hoopengarner, will you join me?
Lauren.
Oh,
Yeah.
over here. Okay, raise your right hand. I, Lynn M. Hoopengarner,
I, Lynn M. Hoopengarner,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that while serving in the office
that while serving in the office
as a member of the Planning Commission
as a member of the Planning Commission
of the City of West Hollywood,
of the City of West Hollywood,
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully
and that I will well and faithfully
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
upon which I am about to enter.
upon which I am about to enter.
Congratulations, Commissioner Hoopengarner, and welcome back.
Thank you. Welcome, Commissioner Hoopengarner. David, can we have roll call, please?
Thank you and good evening. Commissioner Meadows.
Present.
Commissioner Jones.
Here.
Commissioner Hoopengarner.
Present.
Commissioner Gregoire.
Here.
Commissioner Edwards.
Here.
Vice Chair Lombardi.
Present.
Chair Carvalero.
Here.
And we have a quorum.
Thank you, David. Item 5, approval of the agenda. Given I need to recuse myself from item 11B and Vice Chair Lombardi will be taking over the second half of the meeting, I would like to suggest that we move item 13, unfinished business, item 15, items from staff, item 17, items from commissioners, to take place immediately after item 9, consent calendar. Are all in agreement?
I'll move.
Thank you.
I will second.
Thank you. David?
Motion by Commissioner Jones, seconded by Commissioner Meadows. And the motion passes unanimously. We're missing one up there, but it's unanimous to approve the agenda as amended.
Thank you. Item 6, approval of the meeting minutes from February 15th, 2024. Do we have any corrections that we need to make note of? No?
I'll move the approval of the minutes.
Second? Great. Commissioner Edwards? David?
Moved by Commissioner Matto, seconded by Commissioner Edwards. And the minutes are approved for February 15th, 2024, as presented, noting Commissioner Hoopengarner abstaining.
Thank you. Item 7, public comments. This time is set aside for public comments on items not on tonight's agenda. David, do we have any speakers this evening?
Oh, we do. Our first public speaker here in Chambers will be Nicholas Roybal. Nicholas, you will have 3 minutes.
Good evening, Commissioners, and good evening, West Hollywood. I wanted to be present this evening to personally welcome Commissioner Lynn Hoopengarner back to the Planning Commission and to extend my voice as part of this community that sees you as a person for the common person in WeHo. And that you have much support in this community. I have firsthand witnessed your tenacity, your steadfastness, your keen, critical questioning. And this is important. Your insight that every block in this city has a different memory, a different history, a different language. Well, what does that mean, Nicholas? Outside of zoning and liquefaction zones, which I spoke at on Monday, by the way, and everybody should look into liquefaction zones, side note. But you have that ability. And the common citizen in this city in 2024, the person struggling, that working person sees you. And you are badass. And we are grateful for you. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you, Nicholas. And Chair, that is our last public speaker.
Great, thank you. Item 8, Director's Report.
Good evening to the Chair, the Vice Chair, and the entire West Hollywood Planning Commission. I'm Nick Marisich, your Director of Community Development. I wanted to start off by formally congratulating Commissioner Jones since her public announcement at our last meeting, and to let you know we are going to be missing you while you're on leave in the coming months, but we wish you all the best at this exciting time for you and your family. And of course, I also want to congratulate Commissioner Hoopengarner on her appointment and welcome her back to the Planning Commission. I have an update on a recent item at the City Council, the appeal that was filed on the affordable housing project at 910 Weatherly Drive. At the meeting on February 20th, the City Council voted 4-1 to deny the appeal and sustain the decision of the Planning Commission. I also wanted to mention that the city held a community workshop last weekend on March 2nd regarding WeHo 40, which is the West Hollywood Strategic Plan. And the workshop was very well attended, I understand, but for those members of the public who may have missed it, there will be more outreach events scheduled in the near future. And for now, you can learn more about this effort at the city's website for the project, which is engage.weho.org/WeHo Strategic Plan. And you can sign up for project updates, share your ideas, give feedback, and learn more about the project. I also wanted to use this as an opportunity to remind everyone about Engage WeHo. It's the city's new online community engagement platform, and we are regularly updating the site with information on a variety of long-range planning initiatives that are underway in the city. We encourage the community to visit the site at engage.weho.org to learn more about these projects and provide us with your feedback about these efforts. Finally, I wanted to highlight that the American Planning Association's annual National Planning Conference will be taking place next month, April 13th through the 16th in Minneapolis, Minnesota. We will have some city staff participating in the conference, including myself and our planning managers, and we look forward to sharing relevant insights with you in the months ahead. And that concludes my report for tonight. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for the director? No? Thank you. So item 9, consent calendar, we have none. So that brings us to item 13, unfinished business. I need to appoint one person to design review, long-range planning, and sunset arts and advertising subcommittee, given the upcoming temporary leave of absence from Commissioner Jones and Commissioner Copeland's resignation. These appointments will only be in effect until June 30th, 2024. So our new design review chair will be Vice Chair Lombardi. Our new participant in design review subcommittee will be Commissioner Edwards. Long-range planning subcommittee will be Commissioner Matos. And sunset arts and advertising subcommittee will be Commissioner Gregoire. Again, these are temporary appointments until June 30th, 2024. Thank you. Item 15, items from staff. The planning manager's update.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. Thank you. I will first update on upcoming agendas, and then I've got a few comments as well. Just 1 second. All right, so on upcoming Planning Commission agenda, we have our next meeting is March 21st. We have a long-range item, which is a zone text amendment to amend the municipal code to revise all references to Planning and Development Services Department and Planning and Development Services Director to read Community Development Director and Community Development Department. It's just a cleanup item, but since the department name changed, we need to bring that forward. The following meeting is April 4th. Right now, we're slated to hear subdivision extension at 1048 Curson Avenue. And on April 18th, we are slated to hear a conditional use permit for off-site sale of alcohol. We have upcoming to our subcommittees. We do not have any upcoming items for Sunset Arts and Advertising Subcommittee. We do not have any upcoming items for Long Range Planning Project Subcommittee. And likewise, we have no, oh wait, we have one, no, sorry. We have no upcoming items for Design Review Subcommittee, false alarm. So that's what's coming up next. I also wanted to join Nick in congratulating Stacey Jones, Commissioner Jones, and wishing you the best of luck, and to welcoming back Commissioner Hoopengarner. It's good to see your face again. Thank you for your service. I also wanted to just mention briefly that the city has the ability to, the commissioners can go to any sort of trainings or seminars related to planning, and the city can reimburse for the registration fees for that. So if you have any need or want for training or learning opportunities, let me know, and I can help you facilitate that. And that's all I have for this evening, unless you have any questions for me.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for staff? No? Thank you, Jennifer. Item 17, items from the commissioners. Do we have any items to discuss? Commissioner Jones?
Thank you. Well, I'm going to congratulate someone else first, and that's Lynn Hoopengarner. Welcome back, who I continued to call Commissioner Hoopengarner even when she came to meetings. So it is as though no time has passed. And also just wanted to let everyone know this is my last meeting, probably for at least 6 weeks, maybe 8. I am having a baby. And if you see me standing up, that will be very obvious. And I am giving birth next week. So I will miss all of you, but not too much. So I look forward to catching up with folks after meetings to hear all of the Planning Commission tea. But in any case, thank you. We have a full commission again. I just also wanted to let Kimberly Copeland know that we're thinking about her and wishing her all the best. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Jones. Commissioner Gregoire.
Just want to wish Commissioner Hoopengarner back. When I first joined the commission, you were so welcoming to me, and I learned so much from you. So I'm looking forward to having you back and continuing to learn from you.
Commissioner Matos.
Thank you, Chair. I also want to join in congratulating and welcoming our new colleague who has a storied history on the Planning Commission back. We're really excited to have you and your expertise and your knowledge. So welcome, and we're excited to serve with you. I also want to just briefly thank Commissioner Copeland for her service. I was absent the meeting immediately after her resignation, so I wasn't able to address it, but her friendship and hard work on this commission is deeply appreciated, and I wish her all the best, and I know I'll be seeing her around town. That's all I have.
Thank you. Vice Chair Lombardi?
Thank you. I also want to welcome Commissioner Lynn Hoopengarner back. Always appreciated your thoroughness and all of your help and guidance as I was getting on board with all of the, plethora of material and complex items that are presented to us here. It's nice to have you back.
Commissioner Edwards?
Look forward to working with you and to being neighbors. This is very exciting. Thank you. I'm glad you were still available to step up, and it's a challenge to be in community, and it's being up here it's a lot of work. So you've been part of the community for a long time. I look forward to learning from you.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoopengartner, I want to
thank you.
Welcome you back, and I'm a little jealous that you got a nice break, but we'll make it up to you at some point. And Commissioner Jones, I can't wait to meet the newbie. I know everything will go well. Commissioner Hoopengartner, you wanted to say something, yeah?
Well, thank you very much, everyone. Everyone's kind words have meant a great deal to me. I missed you, but not that much. And I'm sure you didn't miss me that much. I do want to say a special thank you to Kim Copeland for her hard work, both here and on Rent, and all of her previous work in the city. And I wish her the very, very best. And I'm really extremely sorry that this replacement was required. I would very much preferred it not be. And Commissioner Jones, I feel like we're passing like ships in the night. But I know how much this means to you, and I'm so happy for you. And wishing you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hoopengartner. Okay, now we'll go back to item 10, public hearings, section 1, projects subject to a Housing Accountability Act. We have none. Item 11, public hearings, section 2, projects that require a public hearing under the law. Item 11A, the commission has been asked to consider a request to convert a property located at 1051 North Spalding Avenue to a common interest development. And I believe we have Sean Min, who's also joining us for the first time tonight to give us a staff report. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. The item before you is the request for a vesting tentative tract map for the subdivision of a previously approved 3-story, 5-unit, multi-family residential building. The subject property is located near the intersection of Spalding Avenue and Santa Monica Boulevard. The adjacent properties and those within the immediate vicinity are developed with 2- and 3-story multi-family buildings within the R3B zoning district. The 5-unit multifamily development was administratively approved on August 10th, 2021. Demolition of the existing structures and construction of the new building has recently commenced. The item tonight is for the subdivision request only. Since the development was already approved, the development itself, including development standards and design, are not before you this evening. It is staff's assessment that the subdivision of this building will not be detrimental to the public welfare and will not impede implementation of the general plan, nor the purpose and intent of the provisions of the zoning ordinance. Therefore, staff recommends that the Commission approve the subdivision request, subject to the findings and conditions of approval set forth in the draft resolution. Before I conclude staff's presentation, staff proposes to amend condition 1.6 in draft resolution PC 24-1537 to reference additional permits associated with the project. It should read, all conditions of approval placed on development permit 19-0025 Development Permit Amendment 22-0011, and Development Permit Amendment 23-0015 are expressly incorporated herein and made a part of this approval to the extent applicable. Thank you, and I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Sean. Do we have any questions for staff at the moment? This is pretty straightforward. Commissioner disclosures, I'm assuming there are none. Okay. Do we have any public speakers on this item, David?
Chair, we have no public speakers for this item.
Okay. Commissioner deliberation, do we have any comment?
I'll move approval.
Okay, Commissioner Hoopengartner, you have a comment?
I just more had a statement. I think that, we've seen a lot of subdivisions over the years, and this one just kind of seems particularly interesting relating to the timing and how it's kind of an end run around the process as intended. And so we're looking at something that development permits were issued a month ago, 2 months ago, and then suddenly it's a subdivision. And the intent of this was that the subdivisions, that if it required a subdivision, it would go through the whole full process. And this is a little bit of an end run. And I know that there's different perceptions on the subject, but the fact that this is coming back just for subdivisions instead of going through the full process is just a little funky as far as I'm concerned. But it is what it is, and it's a state law, and I would second the motion.
Okay. So we have a first and a second. Do we have any questions on the motion? No? Can I get a vote?
Motion by Commissioner Edwards, seconded by Commissioner Hoopengartner. Vice Chair. Thank you. And the motion passes unanimously. We do have an appeal process. The resolution the Planning Commission just approved memorializes the Commission's final action on this matter. This action is subject to appeal to the City Council. Appeals must be submitted within 10 calendar days from this date to the City Clerk's office. Appeals must be in writing and accompanied by the required fees. The City Clerk's office can provide appeal forms and information about waiver of fees.
Thank you, David. And due to a conflict of interest on item 11B, I need to recuse myself, and Vice Chair Lombardi is going to take over the rest of the meeting. So I'm going to take a couple minutes and walk out of the building. Thank you, and we'll see you at the next Planning Commission meeting.
Thank you, Chair. Perhaps I should test right now and see if Jennifer Davis can hear me while we're waiting. Hopefully it's clear now.
Jennifer Davis, can you verify that you can hear us okay? Is she on Zoom? Okay, thank you.
Jennifer, can you hear me? This is,
Oh, yes, I can.
thank
Yes,
you.
great.
Okay,
Great.
good, thank you. We'll get to you in 1 minute.
Thank you.
We have everyone. Are we ready? Yes? Great. Okay. So next up is item 11B. This is 8497 to 8499 Sunset Boulevard. This is a public hearing to consider a request to replace a previously approved static billboard with a new full motion animated off-site advertising billboard on the property that I just mentioned. And I believe Jennifer Davis will be starting off with the staff report.
Fellow commissioners, Jennifer Davis, contract planner for the city. The item before you tonight is a review of a sign permit for the replacement of a static billboard with a 3-sided full motion billboard. It requires a zoning map amendment, a development agreement, and also approval of an addendum to a mitigated neg deck. The Planning Commission makes a recommendation to the City Council, and the City Council makes the final decision on these items. So this development, the Now, was approved in 2018 and is well under construction. I think it may be finished in 6 to 8 months. So the Planning Commission tonight is focusing on just the full motion animated billboard with the 3D capability that replaces that previous static board. The top image shows the drawing for the development permit for the building, and that is the static board that was approved with that permit. Below is the revised animated board. The top board was 1,000 square feet.
Quick
It was
note here,
static.
Jennifer. I'm not seeing the presentation right now. I don't know if anyone
You're
else
not?
is. It was up and then it went away.
Oh.
Sorry
let me
to
stop
interrupt
sharing
you.
and- That's okay. Let me stop sharing and share it again. Let's see where we go. Can you see it now?
Yes. Thank you.
Great, thank you. That would be hard. Okay, and so the top one was 1,000 square feet static billboard, and the bottom is a 3-sided full motion billboard, and that's 2,525 square feet. The billboard is on the north side of Sunset, adjacent to the pink dot side on the east, and residential uses up Miller Drive to the west. It's located near the intersection of Sunset and La Cienega. A principal goal of the billboard policy is to revitalize the built environment of the Sunset Boulevard while providing opportunities for innovative billboards that provide community benefits. A few of the community benefits on this project was a complete revitalization of this lot, annual revenue payments to the city, the opportunity for 3D art, which would be the first in the city of West Hollywood, and also this project will contribute to the Sunset La Cienega intersection improvements. The billboard is separated from the residences to the north by the hillside that it's built into, and the billboard, the residents to the north and to the west are sort of shielded by the building itself or the topography. This is a site plan that shows clearly the city of Los Angeles and the city of West Hollywood demarcation. It shows the art installation along the front of the building, the line of the proposed billboard here, and the area for future public realm enhancements. So this billboard cube is contained within the envelope of the new building. It projects out to the east of the building. All of the internal equipment room, electrical and control equipment are in the building, and there's no equipment on the outside of the building or the billboard. Again, it's a cube, so there are 3 faces. This is the south-facing side, side. This is east facing, and then there's an underneath element here. So this image shows the south facing, which is 1,170 square feet. Also, this drawing shows that the building itself is at 72 feet from grade, and that the top of the billboard is 41 feet from grade. So it's encapsulated in the building itself. This is the east face. It's 793 square feet, and underneath is the 562 square foot piece of the sign. This project went to the Sunset Arts and Advertising Subcommittee way back when, 2021, and I believe Commissioner Huettengarner was on that subcommittee. At that subcommittee meeting, the subcommittee was supportive of the proposed billboard and gave substantial input into the art installation along the front and how it relates to pedestrians and motorists. The subcommittee did suggest that the south face be the art advertising area be extended to fill the whole face of that side of the cube, and that would be 1,200 square feet. The project has been revised since then. So this billboard will be constructed and programmed to accommodate 3D content. And this 3D content, to meet the extraordinary benefit for this project, the applicant will dedicate and pay for the creation of 50% of their art programming as 3D city content or 3D art content. At this point in the United States, I believe there's only a 3D board in New York and downtown LA. The city is proposing improvements to the Sunset La Cienega intersection. So we have quite a few billboard projects at this intersection. The previous one that was at the last Planning Commission meeting will also contribute to this intersection improvement. But all four corners will be improved, and they'll be improved to address public safety, pedestrian safety and experience, infrastructure, mobility, and other environmental goals. So that would take the form of crosswalk and traffic lane realignments, utility upgrades, traffic signal and bus shelter relocations, curb extensions, and security and technology upgrades. So this project came along at the time when the intersection plan was coming about at the same time. So at the time of this approval, the project will be installing the sidewalk improvements that were part of the development permit, and they will later install the required public realm enhancements, because all billboards are required to have public realm enhancements. At the time that this Sunset La Cienega intersection plan is being completed, and this is part of the development agreement. In addition, the owner is contributing $500,000 towards the intersection improvements as well. This is the diagram. I think that was a bit fuzzy in the packet, but I've found Rick gave me a cleaner image of this. So the left side of this exhibit shows what has to be developed with the project right now, and the right side shows the conceptual plan of what the public realm improvements will be in the future when the Sunset intersection improvements and the drawings that have been approved, and there's more definite grading and information, public works information and engineering information. So the final design will be coordinated with the intersection improvements. Here's some views to put things in context a bit. This left one is looking eastbound. The lower right is looking westbound. Pink is the billboard itself. This image on the left is looking north up La Cienega. And to the right, it's looking northwest. At this time, I'd like to invite Rick Abramson, manager for UDAS, to give a brief discussion about the design of this project.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. Rick Abramson, City Architect. I think Jennifer covered some of the key salient points. You know, the aspirations for the Billboard program were that there be a heightened experience along Sunset, not only from vehicular aspects, but also pedestrian. And there's different ways to do that. Certainly some buildings aspire to be what we call urban fabric, where they just kind of fit into a context. Others are more experiential and create something that's very active and engaging. And then others might take on what we call an urban destination, where it's a known place that people say, well, let's go to so-and-so, let's visit so-and-so because it's sort of a known entity. And I think this project really epitomizes the latter two. I think it becomes both highly experiential, especially how the ground plane is treated, and it also is a destination. This can be most likely a locus where there will be selfies and smaller scale gathering. And so I think part of the analysis and the encouragement in working with the applicant team was to take advantage of what's there. The original approved project was already very strong in terms of its massing and orientation and an elevated terrace. But this billboard has allowed it to kind of have a final polishing, I would say. The art component in particular that was approved previously ran from about 1/3 in from the easterly property line all the way to the driveway. And so in order to experience the artist's work, one would have had to walk past this crosswalk uphill and terminate right at the driveway entrance. And so through the city's reconfiguring of the intersection and working with the applicant team, and this came up at the subcommittee as well, the thought was that if the artwork shifts to the east and the crosswalk alignment is set up, now there's an opportunity to experience the full art piece before walking across the street. This reconfigured cube also sets up a somewhat newer relationship between a roof deck terrace at the upper level and the cube itself that is projecting. And so there was some discussion about safety considerations, in particular, as we all know, around town, billboards are known for urban graffiti and other sort of guerrilla efforts, and we wanted to be very mindful in this case and encourage the applicant to think about that. And they came back with a revised guardrail and protection to discourage any sort of climbing up onto the cube and interacting with it in a way that wouldn't be very desirable. And then I think lastly, this sets up, a very interesting relationship that will be new to the city in terms of pedestrian engagement, because the three-dimensional component of this suggests sort of optical viewing angles that are optimized in certain areas to get the total experience. So we'll anticipate that there will be desires to locate oneself in certain positions. I think that's outlined in the staff report more directly. And then ending up with one final comment, and that is that the public realm enhancement piece, in this case, a narrative that will hopefully tell the story about ecology and how plant species really contribute to the larger question of ecological health. And that is been located. We don't have a final design at this point, but we do have a location. So we're looking forward to that piece also being a central part of this experience that is created in conjunction with the art and the new crosswalks. So with that, I'll turn it back to Jennifer to finish up. Thanks.
Thank you. This billboard has one media company logo sign, and it does meet the 8-inch high standard that we've placed on these signs. This billboard is an alternative project under the billboard policy because it exceeds the digital sign area by 1,525 square feet. As an alternative project, it is required to provide an extraordinary benefit, and that benefit is the 3D art that will be part of the arts and advertising 17.5% for this board. Well, that's interesting. Oh, sorry. So CEQA, this item was continued from last year in order to allow us to do a bit more CEQA analysis on the project. So I wanted to take a little more time on CEQA than I normally do, and I hope everybody can hang with me on this because it is a bit complicated. So I wanted to see if I could make it as clear as I could. So in 2018, this project with the static billboard was approved under a mitigated negative declaration. Those mitigation measures on that MMD had to do with the construction of the building, not with the billboard itself. That MMD also contemplated that the billboard would apply to be digital once the Sunset Arts and Advertising policy was adopted. And so that was adopted in 2019. It became part of the specific plan. And we did CEQA analysis, of course, on the policy, and that was a negative deck that was prepared for the off-site signage policy. That ND found no significant environmental impacts. After that, in 2020, the owner applied for this revised billboard portion of the project, and that was pursuant to the city's new billboard policy. In 2021, we did an addendum to this policy neg deck here, and that was to analyze all round one billboard projects, of which this was one. In that addendum, it did say that it needed its own CEQA analysis, which is the MND that was done. In 2023, an addendum to this project-specific mitigated negative deck was done on this billboard proposal, and it includes a lighting analysis and traffic safety memo. So the addendum an addendum in general focuses on the changes to a project that would have come about that could be significant from the previous project that was analyzed. It's called the modified project. And in this case, the modified project is the increased size of the billboard and its 3D capability. So that is what is analyzed in the addendum. The addendum provided explanation, substantial evidence about why this modified project would not result in new environmental impacts, significant environmental impacts over that original MND, and would not increase any of those, the severity of those significant impacts. This addendum focused on light and glare impacts and also on traffic safety. So although the billboard as proposed introduces additional potentially brighter light sources due to its size, it still meets the policy standards. And that standard is 1.4 foot candles at residentially zoned properties. It does meet this standard. Due to a slight potential light trespass at the hotel across the street, the applicant voluntarily agreed to reduce the nighttime lighting levels from 300 to 200 candelas, and acting as a good neighbor as the policy requests of all applicants. And this is listed as a condition of approval in the resolution. The City of Los Angeles properties located to the north and outside the boundaries of the specific plan, the light trespass levels were analyzed at 0.74 foot candles. The City of Los Angeles, in fact, uses 3.0 foot candles for its threshold. The building is built into the hillside, and any light trespass from the billboard would be very limited to the north for those residents. And the conclusion of this is that the light trespass is that the modified billboard component is in compliance with the policy and would not create significant sources of light trespass either within West Hollywood or the City of Los Angeles. The next topic is the traffic safety. So to evaluate concerns over driver distraction with the 3D portion of the billboard, staff requested a traffic safety review in the vicinity of the modified billboard. The study was not required pursuant to SEQA. The traffic did not rise to a level of threshold under SEQA, but the findings are summarized in the addendum, and that's for informational purposes for the public and the commission. The traffic consultants, Fair and Pierce, reviewed current literature pertaining to billboard effects on driver attentiveness and traffic safety, and they reviewed collision data along Sunset Strip and at the intersection in downtown Los Angeles where the other 3D billboard is operating. The study did not yield conclusive evidence that full motion animation or 3D full motion animation signage increases the risk in urban environments or along Sunset Strip specifically. So in conclusion, the addendum with the lighting study and the traffic safety memo determined that impacts associated with this modified project or modified billboard would remain less than significant as set forth in the previously adopted MND. 2 conditions were added to the project as a result of this CEQA review. They are not mitigation measures. The first one is that the luminance of the proposed billboard be reduced to 200 during the evening, and that prior to the certificate of occupancy, and Rick alluded to this, the city would install a railing on the south side of Sunset, just east of the La Cienega intersection, to as a preventative measure for pedestrians who may be on their social media taking pictures of the 3D billboard. Just want to remind them that they are on a major thoroughfare. So we do have a modification to the condition I just said, and that is to add not to exceed the $210 from sunset until 20 minutes prior to sunset nightly. That's just a modification that we'd like to add to that previous condition, or the condition that you see in your resolution. We have representatives here tonight from DUDEC, the environmental consultant, from FKA Lighting, and from Fair and Pierce, who did the traffic analysis. So with that, that concludes my presentation. I'm, of course, happy to answer any questions I can, and the applicant would also like to give a presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer Davis and Rick Abramson. Before we get to the applicant's presentation, are there any questions of staff at this time? I'll start over here on my left. Commissioner Matos.
Thank you, Acting Chair Lombardi. I just have a quick question for Jennifer. Was there a reason that the amendment to the 200 candelas resolution condition is specifically for 20 minutes prior to sunrise versus sunset to sunrise?
That is what the billboard policy currently states in Section 5, and we're just making that condition more robust and in line with what is already in the policy.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Gregoire.
I was just curious about the Pink Dot property. Is there any plans for the development of that property as well, and will there be an impact on the billboard?
Yes, that property is currently has an application in. It is would be a new development, keeping at least one of the buildings, but really redeveloping the others. And it proposes billboards as well. And the billboard operator for that one is the same as the billboard operator for this project.
Thank you. How about over here? Any questions of staff? Commissioner Hoopen-Garner.
Thank you. So I've got a few. In no particular order, the $500,000 that the applicant has pledged towards the intersection improvements, will that be used towards the proposed railings and the improvements on the traffic signals, et cetera, or is that a separate item?
The railing is not part of that 500,000. The 500,000 is to help to pay for the Sunset La Cienega intersection improvements.
So is that, you're referring to the proposed bulb out?
No, I'm sorry. The Sunset La Cienega intersection plan is all four corners. It's a city-initiated project. The bulb out in front of the property, that has to be done by the owner regardless of the intersection improvement. But it's just being delayed because we are doing this intersection plan and we want them to work in concert and have the, Rick could probably speak better to this, but to have the everything line up engineering wise with the plans.
Okay, my apologies, Jennifer, if I don't understand the audio here is pretty blurry on your voice, so it's a little hard sometimes to understand what you're saying. So just to be clear, so who's paying for the proposed railing and the light improvements then?
I'll address that question. It's Brian League, Economic Development Department. That will just be part of the city's capital improvement program.
Okay, so that will be, so that's excluded from the development agreement entirely, but will be, if this is voted for and council approves it, would be paid for by the city.
Correct.
Thank you. To Commissioner Gregoire's point, Jennifer, I think like in your second slide, you had a picture of the pink dot billboard. It was a view from the east. And in my looking through all of the plans, it looks like the current billboard effectively blocks the entire east facing panel of this billboard. Am I getting some sort of bad read off of the way these are laid out, or?
Well, that could be. I'm trying to bring that image up. So I think it was this one.
Because I noticed it in particular on that image, because it's in the package as well. It just seems like you only see the south-facing panel, and you don't see. Yeah, I think it's the next. It was like the second image in the deck.
Oh, okay.
No, keep going down. Oh, go down. I see it's like number 6, maybe.
Okay.
There you go.
Yeah, okay. That billboard will not be there any longer once that site is developed. You're talking about this one.
It will not be there when?
When the pink dot site is redeveloped, and there's an application in for that redevelopment currently.
Okay. Maybe staff and legal can answer the question about what does that do to our decision making in terms of our findings, because that's a future project and something we don't know about and haven't seen and don't know when we'll see it, and we're being asked to make a decision about this and its three-dimensionality that we can't see.
Commissioner Hoopengarter, it's a good point. The commission would not look at a sort of a pending project that's not before you tonight. You're looking at the materials presented specific to the 8497, 8499 Sunset Boulevard, and to your point, the findings that are specific to that project.
Okay, because from the renderings that I've seen, I can't see that east panel at all, which kind of takes away the cubedness of it's a cube. And if without that corner, without that east panel, it's not really a cube. So that's why I'm concerned about that other billboard is there. We can discuss it at length, but I just wanted to get the answer on what we're deciding on. Thank you. Jennifer, if you keep going through your images, let's see, go back. You had that bird's eye view?
Okay. So I think that's down here. Here we go.
There you go. Thank you. So that garden that runs between the two buildings, that's not on the plans. Is that correct?
No, that may be where the paper street is that I talked about. It's a little unclear on this image. Perhaps we can ask the applicant specifically that, but that, I believe this is the property line along here, and this is the paper street that really only low vegetation can be planted on, I believe.
Thank you.
With the permission of LA.
So, I mean, perhaps you and Rick and everybody can explain, because I didn't understand what Paper Street was earlier today, and you were kind enough to send some emails. But help me understand the difference. My understanding is this would not be an easement because the applicant doesn't own that property.
That's correct.
It is a paper street, i.e. a street that exists on paper only due to 100-year-old plus designs for the county, and is actually owned by the county?
Yes, it's owned by LA. It is, it sort of acts like an easement, but the property owner doesn't own it, but apparently there are utilities running underneath it.
Jennifer, why don't you let me step in? I can hopefully provide a little more information. When the land was subdivided, the two parcels were created. This was the street was created to divide the two. Similar to parts of Los Angeles, there's walk streets, and it was probably identified as some sort of walk street to get to the hillside behind the property. Currently, there are utilities under this in the public right-of-way. So with the public right-of-way, it belongs to neither party, neither property on either side, but if it was vacated, it'd be vacated likely down the middle, and the property would go to the budding property owners. But there's utilities under there. If it was vacated, then there would be an easement for those utilities. But since it's a public right-of-way, those utilities just exist in place.
Okay, because I guess given that it's part in your Exhibit D to the development agreement, I think you showed it as Part B of the ecology garden.
Correct.
And there seems to be a lot of question about who owns it, who's going to develop it, who's going to pay for it, all of those things. So I'm a little confused, and this can go maybe into discussion more, but to me, I have questions about when, who, how, who's going to pay for it, what's it going to look like, and what are we approving tonight? Because right now we've kind of got a sketchy thing with some green dots on it and not really, a plan.
There would have to be an encroachment permit issued by...
The county?
It's not a county, it would be... Public Works would issue an encroachment permit, but they'd have to get permission by the underlying utilities to construct plant material. You have to have access to the water line, so soft material would be permissible. Concrete would not, and it's in the applicant's interest to pursue that. It's in the city's interest to pursue that, and the discussions we had, the applicant would pay for any improvements over that public right-of-way. It's like a parkway in front of a property.
Sure.
You plant in the parkway, but it's not your property.
And that gets back to who's to care for it, et cetera. So I guess my real question is, what are we voting for tonight? This is a proposed future improvement. It's a public benefit, but the public benefit won't accrue until some future time with some future actions. And most importantly, how will the public be involved in that conversation when it comes up? Is it intended that would be an entirely staff decision, or is that public benefit and that improvement going to be brought back to this commission, to the public in some way, for future discussion?
It's currently drafted that the applicant owner would have to produce an engineering plan that reflects what's in Exhibit D, and the community development director would have to find that engineering garden plan met the intent of Exhibit D, which would be part of your approval. So it would be at the staff level.
So it would be a staff director level approval outside of the public process?
With the intent that it met the public approval, if that makes...
Without talking to the public. I understand. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. in the images that you created in the link, Jennifer, thank you for those. In the staff report, they had good links to YouTube to see these three-dimensional billboards in various locations. And they were, wow, very impressive, very interesting, but honestly a little scary. So when the traffic study took place, I noticed that those images that were sent did not take place in areas with cars. The vast majority of them were in pedestrian plazas and not where there were vehicles. And so I didn't see in the traffic study any discussion about the vehicles coming, I mean, the images that were on the YouTube, and I encourage everyone to go look at them because they're pretty interesting, but they're literally hands reaching out at you and cars jumping out at you. And honestly, if I were in my vehicle driving, that would be kind of very startling, and it could potentially be, you know, a cause of an accident. So I think it's really cool, but did the study actually take into account, you know, a tiger jumping out at you in your face?
It did look at the 3D capabilities, yes. And the only one that is local is the one that's downtown, and that's why they focused on that one. And that, you're right, that one is, I believe it has a plaza in front of it.
And so to my question to you earlier today, Jennifer, that talked about transition rates of once every 8 seconds, but then image edits every 3 per second. What were that image downtown, what are its rates of transition, et cetera, and how do they correlate to the proposed transitions here in terms of, you did a study in, you know, downtown, it's, you know, 1 image for every 20 seconds versus this is 1 every 8 seconds. I don't know what the study didn't say, what that image transition edits, you know, the counts were on that compared to what's proposed here. Were you able to get that information?
I think I'm going to have to defer to Farron Pierce. Jeremiah Rose is here to answer those kinds of more technical questions.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Commissioners. Jeremiah LaRose from Farron Pierce. We did site observations and staff interviews with the City of Los Angeles staff regarding the 3D billboard that's been installed at Figueroa and Pico in downtown Los Angeles. The billboard's been operational, I believe, since early 2022. I went myself to do some observations. I don't have technical specifications for that billboard on hand. We were not able to get them in time for the meeting this evening. My observation, and of course, you know, my expertise being traffic analysis and transportation, I can't really speak to the differences between the technical capabilities of the proposed billboard. We have other members of our team who might be able to speak to that better. My observation was that the programming of the billboard at Figueroa and Pico was not such that it was any more distracting than the other things that are happening in an urban environment like that. We noted in our technical analysis that in many ways the traffic conditions are very similar. It's also it's a four-way intersection, much like this, a little bit different, but in terms of the overall volumes and activity, very similar, and was situated in such a way that it's really not directly in the line of sight. And so the Commissioner, you mentioned some of the videos that you see in YouTube, things that, you know, exist in Tokyo, for example, where it's primarily a pedestrian-oriented plaza. Those are very sort of sensational opportunities that can be programmed on the billboard. I did not observe any programming like that at the example that's here in Los Angeles, but as Jennifer noted earlier, we don't have a lot of precise comparables other than that option. There are not any other installations that we're aware of in the United States that are in a similar position to what's being projected here. So we worked with the data that we had comment from the City of Los Angeles staff was that in the time that it's been operational, they have not heard any specific complaints from residents, from travelers, from city staff that there have been any substantive issues that are related directly to that billboard example.
Thank you. I realize we're kind of bleeding edge here. This is all new for all of us, and so we've got questions we've never even thought about before, so appreciate that. So related to that, in the illumination and the lighting study, there's a recommendation, and it's in the development agreement, I believe, Brian, that there's monitoring once every 3 years. But I guess my question to staff is there a reason why you haven't done what we've done in other situations where there's potential impacts to the neighborhood, where we do something sort of 3, 6, 12 months instead of waiting 3 years to do this? And is that something that we should be discussing?
It's something you can discuss. This has been the standard on some of the more recent projects. It's not just 3 years. If there is a complaint, city staff is trained to conduct our own study and then verify that with the outside third-party consultant we have. So if we do receive complaints, code enforcement has the equipment to conduct a light test, and if they find there's questions or issues with light spill or anything, we will have a light test conducted.
And that's great. I guess my question is, if that test is simply, oh, it's in compliance, but yet it's still being very disruptive, is there any vehicle to come back and address, and like if it's, and this is where it's, Commissioner Lombardi's expertise, way not mine, the whole 1.4, 200 candelas, however many, to my point of view, is it disturbing the neighbors, et cetera, and is it consistent with, again, this is a 3D environment, and the animation is going to be completely different, and so to bring it to code, if we haven't written into the development agreement tools that help us address it, the code enforcement's going to be hamstrung by what's in the development agreement. So I'm not saying we have to answer this today, but I think it's an important question to ask. How often should this be revisited in a public forum as opposed to just through code enforcement? And what vehicles do we have to make any necessary adjustments? Because code's going to be hamstrung by code.
Yeah, I think you're onto something, and I know we're bringing forward amendments to the policy, and that's something we could look into or consider.
Okay, thank you.
Just one comment. It may not address your concern fully, but condition 3.9 of the billboard resolution does talk about any impacts that are identified, both parties shall seek a timely remedy to the issue or impact. It may not address your concern, but it is in there at least in 3.9, condition 3.9. Just wanted to call your attention to that.
3.9 of the development agreement?
Page 9.
Resolution.
Jennifer, you are muted.
Sorry. That's resolution 231544, and it is condition 3.9, and it's on page 9 of that resolution.
Oh, golly, it's the one piece of paper I don't have with me. Okay, thank you. Okay, let's zig to the gateway. We discussed this via email earlier today. I think there's a little bit of confusion about gateway billboard projects and the city's gateway project. And
yes, I agree. I thought you were talking about the billboard gateway projects. So that was my
correct. So my concern, and there is a paragraph currently in the DA, which you said was going to be removed, which I hope won't be removed, that protects the city's rights to implement any proposed gateway project at that intersection. And that's proposed to stay?
Yes, it will stay in the development agreement 3.9, and I can update you, the gateway project is on hold until the intersection's improved and all the signage boards are complete in this section of La Cienega and Sunset. Then we will reevaluate how that gateway project might fit in with the existing signage and billboards.
Okay. Thank you, that's important. I think that's my basic questions for the moment. So let's, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any other questions of staff right now? Commissioner Edwards.
Yeah, as a follow-up to Commissioner Hubengarner's comments about studies and that we're at the cutting edge. So the question is on page 42, where you made a comment about the study did not yield conclusive evidence, but then you went on further to say that there are some additional studies showing that there may be some impacts.
Yeah, those were academic studies, and again, I think I'll have to defer to our representative from.
Yeah, because my question then is once we approve this agreement, are we locked into that? What is the flexibility that as further information comes to our attention as a city, and since our priority is public safety, what tools do we have now or we need to create that helps us address that? Because, you know, looking at from the dynamics of an attention economy, and that if you have all these devices competing for your attention, and you add this to that element, and we're looking at our phones, and so I don't know if that has been fully part of the analysis when it comes to understanding what the impacts will be in the present and the future if this gets installed. I mean, I appreciate the dynamics of it. I think it's very exciting, but it is going to be different for us than it is for some of those other places.
Agreed. Yes, I can defer to the city attorney on this, but yes, you're right. Once a development agreement is adopted, approved by city council and signed by both parties, it does vest the rights of that development. Whether or not it can be modified is probably on agreement by both parties, but I'll let the city attorney speak to that a little bit more.
I agree with Ms. Davis. The development agreement vests those rights, and so it would be an amendment to the development agreement that would be necessary in most instances.
Sorry, Vice Chair. Yes, I do have a couple more questions.
I think Commissioner Matos had some questions first.
Thank you, Acting Chair Lombardi. I have a quick follow-up question for Jennifer Davis. During your presentation, you had mentioned that there would be a limit in the nighttime hours of 200 candelas, and in the daytime hours, there would be a limit of 300 candelas. Is that correct?
No, the nighttime candelas is what we're talking about limiting. The daytime follows the Section 5 of the policy.
Okay. And we feel comfortable in the highlighted page 9, 3.9 of the development agreement to be able to mitigate any brightness adjustments should they arise?
Yes, and also before the billboards can gain their certificate of occupancy, excuse me, I have a bit of cold, they have to have a lighting test before they are allowed to actually officially operate. So also at that point, we test the lighting and the candelas and that kind of thing before it even gets allowed to be turned on.
Okay.
Good. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Hupengarner, you had another question?
Sorry, yes, I forgot a couple. In the development agreement, in section 6.2 on page 30, it discusses minor changes. And it says that a minor change is considered minor if the square footage adjustment of up to 33%. To be clear, that's 33%. So this entire project could increase by 33% as part of an administrative permit adjustment?
Brian may want to speak to this, but the development agreement is for the billboard, so that would be 33%.
Well, that's what I mean, of the billboard, yes, yes.
Yes.
I need to look into that. I don't think we would approve a minor adjustment of 33%.
33% doesn't sound very minor to me.
I concur.
And the parenthetical after that's equally important. It says, which increase shall not be subject to section 4.1.2 of this agreement, which means no new revenue. So to me, those two components are both, I mean, I'm asking you if you really believe in them, because we'll get into discussion later, but, huh?
Yes, I share your concern.
Okay, thank you. Related to that, Jennifer, I'm having a little confusion about the extraordinary benefit of the 3D-ness of this thing. Yes, it's new. Yes, we want something exciting and vibrant in the city. And we're saying that this three-dimensionality is an extraordinary benefit.
Not just the 3D dimensionality, but the fact that the applicant must, 3D content is very expensive to produce.
Sure.
So in order, we were excited to have any 3D capability in West Hollywood. It would be our first. So the extraordinary benefit for the size of the billboard is that they have to pay for and produce, with Arts Division oversight, the 17.5% on every hour at the top of the hour is allocated for art or city content. 50% of that would have to be 3D art, and that would be the extraordinary benefit.
Which would be funded by the developer.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Now, related to that though, and I'm having a little trouble because the paragraphs sort of overlap. It seems to sound like in here that in exchange for having 3D advertising content, the city is going to forego 8 3/4% of the city's revenue for all advertising that is 3D. Am I misreading that?
That's a question for Brian. That's the development agreement.
The intent there is 8 3/4 of the possible programming. The city gets 17.5% of the possible of programming on that sign.
Mm-hmm.
So 8 3/4 of that will be 3D, and the owner will fund that. Anything above 8 3/4 up to 25% of the total screen time, the owner gets a credit towards the revenue payment if they can program 3D for advertisements. So you're correct.
I think I'm still a little confused. Let's take the art component out of the conversation for
Sure.
the moment. So with the, let's just do nice round numbers, 20% city, 80% applicant.
Okay.
With their 80%, they have the choice to produce 2D content or 3D content, correct?
Correct.
Okay. To the extent that they produce and sell 3D content, does this development agreement say that their payment to the city goes down?
Correct.
It does.
That's the intent of the agreement.
So I'm trying to understand this. Would 3D content be more valuable in the community and as a sales price than 2D content. If I have a billboard and I go out to the world and say, you can put your Gucci bag in 2D or your Gucci bag in 3D, and if you do your Gucci bag in 2D, it's 10,000 bucks a month, and if you put it in 3D, it's 30,000 bucks a month.
The intent of this provision was to encourage 3D advertising.
And do we really feel that that encouragement is needed, given the additional revenue that will be generated?
That was what was in the development agreement, and some of this predates my time, so
Okay.
I'm not able to answer that.
I will discuss it later, but I just wanted to make sure I was reading this correctly, that the city is actually going to make less money on 3D content than they will on 2D content.
You're very correct.
As currently written. Okay, thank you. I'll say enough for now. Thank you.
Do my colleagues have any other questions? I have one or two quick questions, well, hopefully quick questions. But just first, we heard the Sterling Building project at the last meeting, and I think we had some discussion at that time about the public realm improvements that are occurring at this intersection. So my hope, or maybe you can help clarify again, we're going to try to find a way to have this be presented or discussed at a later date as it's prepared and ready, right?
That would be Rick's
Yes.
champion. He's the champion of that project.
Yeah, so we are scoping it currently and negotiating the contracts, and the plan is to bring it to the council in April at this time. So it is imminent.
Okay. Would it be brought in any capacity to the Planning Commission, or is it under the purview of just City Council? I'm just curious your take on this, just so we understand.
No, I think because it's public space, it would not be within the purview of the commission.
Okay, thank you. And then I do have a question relating to the lighting studies as well. Just want to make sure I understand what's been calculated and planned to date. And I'll start that question, or maybe we have a consultant here that can speak toward that.
We do. We have Jacob from FKA.
Okay, thank you. Hello. So the question I have relates to the calculation study and how it was performed and what it means relative to the data that's presented. So it appears that everything is relatively acceptable in terms of being below the thresholds that have been set. And thank you for the thorough report. I saw a lot of the calculations that were presented. I guess the one question I have is, I was not seeing it, maybe I missed it in the report, but how was the model actually prepared? And the reason why I'm asking this is because this is a complex 3D sign, and there can be a baseline assumption that these panels are Lambertian, so all of the distribution of light is equally going in all directions. But my understanding is a lot of this signage technology is actually very directional, and it's focusing the light in a certain direction. So I'm curious what you used in that calculation and what the baseline assumption was that got to the numbers that you have.
Yes, thank you. So our lighting calculation is a 3D model that includes the 3D model of the building, 3D model of the sign. So in this case, it was a three-dimensional, all of the three faces included in that model. It includes topography and massing of surrounding buildings. And then it's run in AGI 32. That's the lighting software. And to your question or comment about kind of the directionality of light, we've assumed, like you mentioned, a Lambertian type of distribution, which is actually the most conservative because we've assumed the maximum candela value in every direction. And so the way that signs work, some of the more modern ones, is to actually reduce the luminance in a certain direction, but not increase the luminance in any particular direction. So the maximum is always 200.
Okay, I think I'm following. I guess the one question I have is, do we know what the signage really is doing in terms of its light distribution relative to what you calculated?
So I don't know exactly what the end product will be, but we've assumed the most conservative, which is that we have the maximum amount of light exiting the sign in all directions.
Mm-hmm.
So anything that would shield or confine the light to a certain direction would actually be a reduction.
Okay, okay. I guess what I'm trying to get at or understand is I'm making an assumption here, but perhaps there's a level of directionality to the signage component in terms of where the light is being directed. And that can be a good thing for sky glow in particular, which is important from an ecological standpoint. But the center beam candle power, the actual, where the most punch is going, basically, if it's more downward, we do have a tall sign and it is close to residential areas, so I'm trying to understand how that may change or impact the calculation. It sounds like maybe that wasn't taken into account. I know that this is kind of a new thing and a new topic, and it's not easy to predict these things, especially if the sign hasn't been selected yet. But I guess that was my point, is I wanted to understand what you calculated, and is it true that in reality that there might be a directionality to the light with an increased intensity downward, and we just don't know right now?
Again, it would not increase intensity downwards. That would require, or that would infer that the candela value is exceeding 200 in that direction.
Okay, yeah. And then in this limiting, I guess you assumed a dimming factor to the signage. Is that something you've looked at, or you've just said that's the threshold that's met, and since you don't know the product, you don't know what it's being dimmed to yet? Like that equals 3%, for example.
So we've run the sign at 200 candelas per meter squared, and the sign will have to comply with that. So we don't know exactly, again, what the dimming will be doing, but it must be below that brightness.
Yep. Okay, so you set the threshold, but we don't, without knowing the product, we don't really know what that percentage would be. But as you know, that there's a requirement that dimming is built into the design, so that would be, okay. And I guess the other question I have is, most applicants, when they've come forward and there's been a lighting study, we've seen some form of 3D views of the model. I didn't see anything in the report. I'm just curious why that wasn't included. The tables are really helpful, the data is really clear, but it was very scientific and technical looking, and we didn't actually get a peek at what that model is as you described it.
Usually, just for our firm, we would only include that in areas where we felt it was necessary to explain what was going on in cases where the lighting was impacting a sensitive zone property. And that did not occur in this case, so that's the kind of simple reason why we didn't include any 3D views here.
Okay, okay. Something to consider also, opportunity as this moves forward, if it is moving forward to City Council. But I know that these are questions and it's kind of hard to know what's going on without seeing it.
Yeah, we can certainly produce those.
Okay, thank you. That was my last question. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
And Commissioner Edwards, we have a few questions. You might not want to move too far, just in case. Oh. We can take a break. If there are no more questions of staff, it's probably, okay, can we do one more question and then take a break?
I was going to save this for later, but since you brought it up, I asked this of Jennifer earlier. If we go to page 6 of the lighting study, it shows that, in fact, both hotels and both residential properties immediately across the street from this are excluded from the study. And Jennifer, clarified that, because the term, I believe, is, what is it called? Residentially zoned properties is the study area. So in that image, and Jennifer, I don't know if you can show it to everyone, it's very clear, it sort of carves out the strip that's not studied. And because the mixed-use properties across the street are not, in air quotes, residentially zoned, they're mixed use, they're excluded from the study. And Jennifer, I think you explained it, that that's because in the Sunset Specific Plan or in the Billboard Plan that it says you study residentially zoned properties and not actual residences and hotels that are impacted. So So I think that's really important for all of us to understand, because that is a little concerning that we specifically include actual people living in residences just because they're not in a zoned residential space. And to our director, perhaps that's an opportunity to revisit the plan itself as to what we study and don't study. But I just want to make that clear that while you did some supplemental work, that was not part of the study. Is that correct?
Correct. Our study does not consider those to be included as in the study. We don't analyze it as we do the residentially zoned. We actually did, though, later in the study, I wanted to point out, we did provide those values just so that we know what those are. And the applicant made an effort to actually be a good neighbor to those properties, even though the policy does not apply pretty clearly to those locations.
Okay, because I think, Jennifer, I asked a question earlier, but I don't know if you had an answer as to how many affordable units are in that corner property?
I do not know that, no.
Because if I'm understanding, there's affordable housing in that corner property, and they were excluded from this study, correct?
Jacob, I think, did a calculation on that building. Did you not, Jacob?
Yes, so we did calculations on those. However, again, we're not including those as residentially zoned sensitive use. We're sticking with what the policy is designating.
Understood. Thank you.
Can you clarify?
I just might add something.
Just to interject, just questioning, which page is that on for reference?
Where we provide the calculations?
It's page, the map is on page 6 of the lighting study under project description. It looks largely orange.
Yeah, and then on page
16,
okay. There is a diagram of where all of the light trespass calculations are performed. And then later on page 29, we have the calculation values there.
And so your maximum average values are all still quite low.
Yes, all below the policy threshold.
Okay. Are there any other questions? So we were going to take a break. Is 5 minutes sufficient to speed things along? Okay. Yes. So we're going to take a 5-minute break. It's 8:05 right now, so we'll be back at 8:10. Are we ready to get started again? Can everyone please be seated? Okay, so that concludes the staff report and questions of staff. And I would like to ask Commissioner Jones if you could please provide a brief summary of the Sunset Arts and Advertising Subcommittee Design Review Meeting, which I know occurred several years ago now. So we've heard a good amount of information from the staff report. Feel free to be brief. Thank you.
Sure. So this was so long ago, I had to pull out a different notebook of notes, but it's there. This was 2.5 years ago. It was from our June 10th, 2021 Sunset Arts and Advertising Subcommittee meeting. Again, I think it's fairly well summarized in the staff report, kind of the basic gist and synopsis of our feedback. But at that time, the DA had not yet been negotiated, and it was also a design conversation, so really wouldn't have been germane to this meeting anyway, this particular meeting that I'm speaking of. I think that overall, there would be a really positive response to the design of the billboard itself, especially as related to the project. I think it was I think we all felt it was a very strong example of something that we wanted to see more of kind of earlier on in the Sunset Arts and Advertising Subcommittee's meetings for these kinds of projects. Commissioner Hoopengarner also already mentioned that there was a note about putting into the DA something that we wanted to make sure that there were kind of no rights to challenge any gateway projects the city might propose. That's already been covered. I know that I have a note here about the artist potentially speaking at Planning Commission. I don't know if they're here this evening. We talked about illumination studies. We also talked about the pedestrian experience, specifically as related not just to the cube kind of billboard itself, but to the, I don't want to call them totems, the posts alongside the front of the building, the south-facing side of the building. And I think where we all kind of netted out was that there's more pedestrian traffic, generally speaking, on the south side of Sunset, and also that not everyone on Sunset's going to be able to see, every single billboard or interact with every single element, but we did want to keep that in mind because there will be kind of varying levels of interactivity and experience with this billboard and with the building itself, depending on where people are situated, whether it's coming up La Cienega or walking east or west on Sunset itself. I think that's almost it. Sorry, I'm toggling between notes here. I think we also had a question about the durability of the posts themselves. The applicant's welcome to kind of address that in their presentation or rebuttal. That summarizes my comments. Do you have any other notes?
Great, thank you. No, I think that covers things well. Commissioner Hoopengarner, is there something you wanted to add?
I would just supplement. I think she covered it perfectly. There was, I think, conversation, and it did show up in the development agreement about making sure that all three sides were integrated with the same signage, that we didn't have three different things going on at the same time, that it was one look at all times. So I think it's in the development agreement, and I would say that we were, I think, in agreement then very strongly that that be a key element to this. And related, I think, to I don't know if they're balusters or whatever they're called, the posts. We had a conversation about, and this is a question to staff as well. We had a question about, they appear in the imaging to only be south-facing. And so we had a discussion about, should they be east and or west-facing as well, so that the driver experience could see them, because and it's hard to tell from the renderings, but if you're driving, it seems like you just see the metal side of the thing and not the visual element. Is that true?
Maybe when we get to the applicant's presentation,
maybe we can wait till you guys can to discuss it.
Okay.
But I know that was one of the discussions we had at design review, is about that experience, back to the pedestrian experience.
Okay, great, thank you. Before we get to the applicant's presentation, are there any disclosures that anyone would like to make at this time? Commissioner Matos?
Yes, I met with members of the public. We could discuss items contained in the staff report. I also met with the applicant and applicant's representative, and we discussed matters contained in the staff report as well.
Anyone else? Commissioner Jones?
Yeah, I had a very brief phone call with the applicant's representative. We discussed items contained in a staff report, but stopped short of having any kind of presentation or kind of Q&A. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay, great. And then with that, we'll move on to the applicant's presentation. If you want to please approach, and I believe you have 10 minutes.
Thank you, Chair Lombardi, members of the Commission. My name is Jeff Seymour. First and foremost, I want to congratulate Commissioner Hoopengarner and wish Commissioner Jones best wishes as you move on to bigger and greater things. We want to take a chance at this point to thank staff for the input and assistance they've been giving through these many, many months. On behalf of my client, Jeff Appel, we appreciate your consideration to approve this unique and distinctive full-motion animation billboard featuring the 3D content. The Now project was entitled in 2018. It went into construction in 2021, and we believe the project will be complete sometime in August or September of this year. The request we bring to you tonight will complete our development package, complementing the street improvements and developments in and around Sunset and La Cienega. At this time, Damian Posidente will provide a project presentation. That will be followed by Jeff Appel. And then you should be aware that the Orange Barrel team, headed by Devin Carruthers, is here tonight to answer any technical questions or signage questions, and then the rest of us will be there to help him out and to answer any of your concerns. Thank you. Damien?
Excuse me. All right. Let me just advance. Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Damian Posidente. I'm an associate principal with Methuen. We are the architecture firm and applicant of record. Can you hear me better now? Okay. Again, Damian Posidente, associate principal at Methuen and project manager for this project through construction. Just to give you a bit of an idea of the architectural concept, this billboard cube was part of the original design intent and the design idea of this overall massing for the project. As you can see from the diagram above, the overall zoning envelope and cube shown on a plinth, and then we've pulled out the second floor mass and rotated it. The rotation is in direct correlation to the orientation of the overall site relative to La Cienega Boulevard and the intersection coming up from the north. So as it pertains to questions around the visibility of the eastern facade and element, it was taken into consideration during the building design. Again, as you're aware, the steep grade coming up La Cienega to Sunset, and that's really the main visible point forward, and also the rationale for having a digital component at the underside of the building in addition to the pedestrian experience. The building itself is a simple stoic mass executed in white concrete, and the media cube is an integral component to that building and that massing. The building and the media cube fill a void in the existing Sunset Strip that used to be a residential building that is no longer. And this will create a much more inviting pedestrian experience along the Sunset Strip, especially connecting Pink Dot to properties to the west. The billboard is mounted relatively low into the building face, just at the second story here, starting at about 20 feet above the sidewalk level. It's also sited to avoid impact to existing signage on the street. As you're aware, the building is currently under construction. Currently estimated completion date is August of 2024. This picture is from last week, and again, we are proceeding quickly with construction of the corn shell. This image, which you saw previously, is a bird's eye view of the project. It shows the media cube as an integrated part of the building, as discussed previously. It's separate and distinct from the outdoor patio and terraces at the second and third levels, and it's a clear visual connection to the entry plaza at the ground floor. The building and billboard will activate the sidewalk and the pedestrian experience along the northern edge of Sunset Boulevard. The project team has been working with staff on some improvements to the building that better, excuse me one second, sorry, that better align with the improvements that the billboard will bring. Those include a new glass railing at the third floor terrace to prevent unauthorized access to the top of the billboard. The art bollards along the sidewalk on Sunset Boulevard, previously approved by the Arts Commission, those will be shifted east in coordination with the artist. In addition, the main entry ramp and stairs will be shifted to the east as well, to a location more suitable for future streetscape improvements and a more functional entry plaza for future tenants. This site plan shown on screen shows the new location of the modifications to the third floor. The exact location and count of the art bollards will need to be approved by the Arts Division. This also indicates the angle to which the billboard is tilted relative to the street, reflecting again the visibility of the eastern side of the billboard. As we've stated previously, one of the most exciting parts of this project is the 3D capability. Again, this will be the third project in the US with this capability at this time. This will also be the first digital media in the LA area to use 3 faces, 2 vertical obviously on the east and south and the underside of the cube, to create 3-dimensional content. This will also be the first project on the Sunset Strip with this type of compatibility and commitment committed to celebrating 3-dimensional art. We just wanted to share a little bit about an understanding of how 3D art is created with a 2-dimensional image. 3D content is created by using anamorphic artwork and a forced perspective as an optical illusion. As seen in the images, anamorphic artwork uses a distorted perspective to give the illusion of 3-dimensionality. A prime example of this from actually the 1940s is the forced perspective known as the Ames room. The Ames room tricks your eye into thinking the room is square and the visitors are different sizes. In reality, the room is not square, as shown in the diagram to the right, using depth and angles to give illusion of a square room. This is an example of a 3D content billboard in downtown LA at the Moxie Hotel, again mentioned on Figueroa and Pico. The image on the right is taken from the optimal viewing point for the video, and the image on the left is from a straight-on view of one of the sides. You can see the image on the left has some slightly distorted dimensions, like seen in the back of the chair and in the floating AC Hotel logo. Let me just play this image. Would anyone like to see it again? Is that clear? You want to see it? Okay. It's clear. Okay, great. Good. That concludes the design presentation. I just want to introduce Jeff Appel, the property owner, to have some final comments in the presentation. Thank you.
You have 3 minutes left.
That's right. Hi, my name is Jeff Appel. I'm with the Noun, the property developer. I have to say I'm a bit anxious, and I question myself. Almost at 50 million on this project. It's way beyond what is typical for construction when you think about architectural white concrete. And I have a passion that everyone thinks I'm crazy for architecture. And we were permitted on this project 6 years ago. And I say to myself, should I have waited 6 years before I started? Because I feel like I'm a little nervous tonight. I mean, we're committed to do a great project, and I wonder where I made the mistake that I'm asking for permission to do this project this evening. What should I have done you know, just waited with this project? I don't know. I thought everyone was so excited about it. So I'm a bit anxious. I have to say, working with staff, City of West Hollywood is amazing. They really care. They're passionate. They respond to phone calls a lot better than a lot of other cities I've worked in. But I love the project. I'm excited about the project. I'm proud of it. I'm here to answer questions, but thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the applicant at this time, or do people want to, do my colleagues want to wait until after we've heard from public? Anyone have any questions for now? Okay. Well, then in that case, we'll begin the public comment portion of the hearing. All questions and comments on this matter are to be directed to the commission, not the audience. And David, how many public commenters do we have in the room? And do we want to start here, or do we want to start in Zoom?
We're starting in chambers.
Okay.
We do have a few. Our first public speaker in chambers will be Ellen Evans. Ellen will be followed by Amanda Hootman. You have 3 minutes.
Thanks. Good evening, commissioners. My name is Ellen Evans, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Doheny Sunset Plaza Neighborhood Association, your neighbors to the north, and I feel like I was here just yesterday about this same intersection. First of all, we do want to thank staff for the analysis of light trespass affecting the city of LA. We really appreciate that. I want to talk about the intersection and its particular dangerousness. It's a very complicated intersection, and I really can't imagine that the traffic study analyzed a similarly dangerous intersection, and not just with one billboard, but there's the Sterling Plaza billboard that was just approved, which is two-sided. There'll be this 2,500 square feet of what looks completely fascinating, and then another billboard presumably on the Pink Dot property. So when we think about ourselves as drivers, I think it's hard to believe that this won't have an effect on the attention of drivers. And then, as Commissioner Hoopengardner pointed out, you can't undo this. So I really think that the intersection geometry should be settled also before these projects are approved, so that there can be a real understanding of what the safety of the intersection is. And for example, even in the presentation, I saw a picture where the crosswalk across Miller is not where I think it's projected to be. So I think full information is necessary. Second of all, neighbors on this on Miller Drive have had quite a relationship with the project. I want to say the construction crew has been pretty good, but when the project was initially approved, they felt like their concerns were not heard, and that the basic stance of the city of West Hollywood was, if you don't like what's happening, move. So you might not. You might be wondering why they're not engaging in the process as much, and it's partly because they just don't feel heard. They had no idea that the size of the billboard had been increased so much. Finally, I want to ask whether this is really an extraordinary benefit, because if the billboard is the extraordinary benefit, it just seems like all the billboards are going to be substantially larger than what was originally envisioned by the plan, and I don't think that's how the plan was meant to work. Thanks very much for your consideration.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Amanda Hootman, followed by Leon Nabokov.
Hi, everyone. I'm just coming out tonight to voice my support for the billboard, because this project should be providing about $60 million in funds for city services. And I think much needed city services. I think the 3D design is very sleek and clever, and I'm hoping that it will be used to project some art and kind of beautify the area. I think the design will be really appealing for pedestrians, and that foot traffic will be really welcome to businesses in the area. And I support the NOW project for including improvements to kind of all four corners of the intersection, including traffic safety improvements and funding for pedestrian enhancements. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Leon, followed by Maya. And you have 3 minutes.
Good evening. Thank you, Commissioner, for giving me a chance to speak. I am speaking in favor of the billboard.
Could we also get city of residence? Apologies to interrupt you. We can give you an extra few. We just want to get everyone's name and city of residence.
My name is Leon Nabatoff, and I live in Los Angeles. I'm surprised. One of the things that I don't think people have really talked about tonight is this 3D billboard. To me, when I heard about it, it was exciting. To me, it's a destination. It becomes something that when I have people that come to town, this is one of the things they're going to want to see. And it's hard. This area right now is kind of a drive-by area. I think it's a thing that people drive through. And as somebody that lives here, I think we crave destinations that we can go to and walk around and have experiences in. And I understand you want to do due diligence and make sure that this is safe. At the same time, not everyone here wants to drive all the time. We want to be able to walk places, go to terraces, have nice views, come up to the area, leave the car behind, go and see an exciting art billboard that's something that we can't see anywhere else. To me, I think that we've lost sight of what we're trying to add to be vibrant, to look toward the future so that everything isn't just like every other project that we see in the area. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. And our last public speaker in chambers will be Maya. Maya, you have 3 minutes. State your name and city of residence, please.
Hi. Oops, sorry. Okay. I am Maya from Hollywood, and I would like to toot my own horn that my family has been here for 5 generations, from the west side in Hollywood all the way to East Los Angeles. So I come with that love for LA history. So it might be a surprise to some that I am in support of this 3D animation digital billboard, this modern design, a part of this larger project, the NOW project. And a big reason is because I feel like we are creating history by putting up one of the few billboards in the nation that uses innovative technology and design while also embodying the energy and the vitality and the legacy of Sunset. And beyond that, when it comes to the risk of increasing traffic and dangerous driving, well, being here as long as I have, I've noticed that in the past 10 years and in the past 4 years, drivers are getting worse out there, and it is not because they are distracted by what they're seeing outside their car. They are looking at their phone inside the car. So quite frankly, I would love something that would lift their chin up to look out their window. And secondly, I don't really think they're distracted as much as they're impatient. So I love that this project includes many traffic safety improvements like crosswalk and traffic lane realignments. That to me is the direct response to the issues we're facing with LA drivers becoming riskier due to high traffic. And lastly, if I may, I love that this billboard design is under the rooftop because that provides more air ventilated spaces, oasis-like spaces for pedestrians, people in LA, whether they're visitors or from here, to sit on a rooftop and enjoy Sunset, which is something that we've needed since the COVID lockdown in 2020. We need ventilated spaces. We need spaces where anyone, whether immunocompromised, a senior or not, can feel safe enjoying the rich culture and art in our city, in LA, and in WeHo. So that's those are all the big reasons why I'm excited for this. I feel like everyone should feel safe and engaging and enjoying these modern designs that increase more digital media artists, highlighting them in our community. And I think that this is a great initiative to pass for the legacy of Sunset. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair, as the last public speaker in Chambers, we do have one on the Zoom platform, and I will turn that over to Jill.
Hello, commissioners. We do have one person on speaking. His name is Aaron. Make sure you *6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and city of residence, and you will have 3 minutes. Thank you, Aaron.
Hi there, Aaron Kanan, Los Angeles. Sorry, I'm just in shock from the past 3 excited speakers. I've been to about 8 of these digital billboard committee and subcommittee meetings and never heard one person speak in favor. So back to my planned remarks. I want to congratulate Ms. Jones and her family and welcome Ms. Hoopengarner. Your insightful questions and commentary are an incredibly welcome reprieve from the staff and developer echo chamber, which I've been witness to. Today, I'm calling you as a DSPNA board member and a voice for thousands of residents who will be adversely impacted by the proposed digital billboard projects. This is not merely a debate about aesthetics, it's a conversation about the heart and soul of a community. Regarding today's agenda item, the proposal to expand a previously approved 1,000 square foot billboard now to over 2,500 square feet is a glaring example of overreach with no community meeting held or direct noticing to neighbors in conjunction with the increased request. Nearly tripling the billboard size without a community meeting seems unacceptable. We respectfully request that this item be continued so that a community meeting can be held and neighboring voices can have a real chance of being heard. Stakeholders from Miller Drive attempted to intervene during the initial approval process, citing concerns that the placement of the driveway posed a danger. Despite their efforts, they felt disregarded in the resulting plan and now firmly believe that West Hollywood is merely pretending to consider their concerns as well as the adverse impacts that they and other local residents will be forced to endure for a long time to come. We are not against progress, nor are we opposed to thoughtful development. However, when such development comes at the cost of our well-being, drowning our nights in artificial light and our days in the distraction of towering digital billboards, we have to take a stand. Closing and calling to action, we will respectfully request that the Planning Commission halt all digital billboard review processes. These projects are advancing rapidly, and in the spirit of good faith, due diligence, we urge you to initiate a series of community meetings. Take time to assess the initiative as a whole. Let the voices of the people be heard. Allow the residents who call this place home have a significant say in the shaping of their environment. Thank you.
Thank you. And Chair, just for the record, staff did receive a request to speak on the Zoom platform by a Grace Solano. However, she provided no contact information where we could forward her the Zoom link. But she does state that she is in favor of staff's recommendation for this project.
Okay, thank you. With that, now opportunity for the applicant to present their rebuttal. If you have one or would like to, 5 minutes.
I'll be very, very quick. Good evening, Commissioners. Devin Carruthers, Orangeboro Media. More? I'm too tall. I'll squat down a little bit. Devin Carruthers, Orangeboro Media. I reside in the city of Los Angeles. I just want to say thank you to staff. Thank you, Commission, for hearing us tonight. We're really excited to see the streetscape improvements come forward. As someone that frequently visits this intersection, both in my car and on feet. I'm really excited to see these improvements happen, and we look forward to working with staff over the next couple months to really implement that in a way that works great for the city and for us. So our team is here to answer any questions that you may have, and we stand by. Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. Do any commissioners have any questions before we close the public comment portion of the hearing? Does anyone want to go with questions for the applicant? No questions? I do think I have a question.
Please, thank you.
Let me find it. One moment. I did have a question because the completion date was brought up during your presentation, August or September of this year. And as Commissioner Hoopengarner brought up earlier, there's a question about that pink dot property, if that's what we can call it, which has this existing signage. So I'm just curious, like, what's your take or context in all of that? I mean,
do you want to say? Okay.
Our office is initiating the application. It's been submitted to the city. There's going to be a number of changes on that site. We're still working with staff. There will be relocation of signage. So this body is going to have a significant amount of time to review, and we'll come back. But we don't have a time when we're coming back. This is really at the very beginning of the process.
okay, thank you. The only other question I have is, I am curious if the artist is here.
He's not.
I wouldn't be either if I were the artist. Okay, thank you. I don't know. I feel like maybe there's more exciting things to be done. Okay, thank you. And any other questions? No? Okay. Then in that case, we can close the public comment portion of this hearing and bring this matter back to the commission for discussion and deliberation. Does anyone want to go first? I'm looking to my left. Anyone? Everyone's nervous to go first. Fine. Okay. Fine. Commissioner Hoopengarner, please.
Fine. Well, as I said at, design review, SASE, I really like this design. I love its dimensionality. I love how creative it is. I love the opportunity for 3D images and the vibrancy that can bring to this community. I think, as probably some of my questions illustrated, I do have concerns about how this is being implemented and the development agreement in particular. We're being asked to make a recommendation to council regarding all of this, and I'm not really comfortable, given that there's some elements, like the 33%, and there's some significant chunks here that need addressing. I don't think that it needs to be a big deal, but I do think it should be addressed. Especially given that there's language in the development agreement that says that it needs to be executed before it can be approved by council. So if what we're sending forward to council in this vote tonight isn't ready for prime time, and it gets executed by the applicant and then given to council, then we've got ourselves at sort of a crosshairs that I don't think we want to be in. So, that said, and just for reference, that is 8.3.1 in the development agreement that states that it has to be signed by the owner prior to council approval.
That doesn't mean, that's the requirement so the owner acknowledges the terms in the development agreement, but it doesn't mean that council
has to approve it.
Correct.
Absolutely. But I'm not sure that we want to send something to council with their very busy calendar to have them nut out all of these things that they should be addressed in advance. Now, I'll leave it to my colleagues whether or not we can be sufficiently precise in, corrections that need doing prior to this going to council, but that would be my concern. And
I think we're open for recommendations from this body to bring forth.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that said, I think my single biggest concern is this refresh rate, the 3 images per second, or 3 edits per second, the 8-second transition. I don't have good clarity around what that means as relates to a 3-dimensional image and what that's going to look like and how that's going to work, and how are we going to, this is tricky because I don't necessarily want to limit the tiger jumping off the thing because it's really cool, but by the same token, we've got public safety issues to address. And, you know, we're talking about if you're, let's say, you know, coming up La Cienega and you've got a tiger jumping at you or a car coming out of the thing straight at your face, you know, what are the public safety implications of that? And I don't see the language in here that talks about, I'll just call it the startle factor. And you know, the other link that Jennifer gave us was the artist's images, which were almost, you know, hypnotic. They were just these beautiful, flowing, cycling images, and they were gorgeous. And they don't have that startle factor. But how do you codify that in a way that doesn't limit the creativity of the piece, but at the same time protects the public safety? And I don't have the answer to that, but I do think it should be addressed. Because, I mean, the one link you sent out of, on the YouTube thing, like the first one was like this monster coming out, and I don't do horror. It's against my religion. That could be very problematic. So we can discuss, but those are my thoughts on that subject. So that relates to the whole refresh rate, the 3 edits per second, which I realize is part of the current billboard policy, but the current billboard policy never envisioned animation and 3Ds, which actually kind of brings me to another question, which I don't necessarily want to open public comment again, but don't we have a limitation on our 2D billboards, our digital billboards about animation? Don't we?
I mean, I'm sure we could have staff confirm that, but that's what I remember. Yes, that is it.
That there,
yes.
You know, there's an image and then there's a transition, and that's, I think, where the 8 seconds comes in.
But it's also not an animated.
Yeah.
So animated maybe is a different thing.
Yeah, so we've got this whole new beast, if you will, that I don't know that we've really fleshed out. And, you know, we are very bleeding edge here, only the 3rd one in the country. And that's great, but let's not, you know, let's try and do it right. Again, I don't have the answer, but maybe Brian does, I don't know. For the record, you know, I asked staff of this, you know, the traffic study talked about the number of accidents at that intersection. For the record, that's only accidents reported to the Sheriff's Department. And that is not all the accidents. If you've ever been in one, I've been in one, the first question when you call is they say, is anyone bleeding? If not, call your insurance company. And that doesn't get reported. So how many accidents actually happened in that intersection, I think, is something that really should be addressed. I don't know how we can address it, but I think that's important when we talk about safety. We talked about the whole revisiting the lighting on a 30, 60, 90-day basis. You know, I'm open to an amendment to the DA that would address that as opposed to every 3 years. Brian, have you had any further thoughts about the 33%? I'm opening the public comment.
Yeah, I think we can clarify that point for you.
So the 33% came from the policy, and that is what is allowed for amendments to existing billboards. But we're open to recommendations if the commission wants to make a recommendation to change that.
And that was partly for the static boards when they would increase, for certain campaigns.
Yeah, so the 33% plus the fact that that wouldn't increase the revenue was problematic for me. And the fact that the 3D content, which is going to be sold at a much higher price, will actually generate less revenue for the city. That was counterintuitive to me. I just don't see that is it certainly not a precedent we want to set, because I would imagine there's other people who are going to want 3D images in this town. The Exhibit D to the development agreement, which is the eco garden whatever, and I had to kind of really zoom in on it because it's really hard to read, has a lot of good language in it about, it's the applicant's obligation to maintain it, and et cetera, but it was really hard to see, and it wasn't, in my reading, explicitly called out in the development agreement itself. And to my mind, that should be really explicitly there, especially given how amorphous that whole thing is. It should have as much clarity as we can possibly give it up front. And if we were to send a message to council that 4.11 that we discussed, that it's one image at all times, is a critical component to the DA, and that if,
just to make it conversational, it's my understanding that that is already a component of the development agreement.
Absolutely.
So I don't necessarily see a need to reiterate something that's already present in the development agreement.
No. Just as we often do, we send a message sometimes when we're not approving them, we're just sending a message to council.
Oh, I'm aware.
So that's all I'm saying, is that that was a very clear conversation in SASE, and that it's the kind of thing that could go missing because it's one line.
Yeah, I mean, I do feel comfortable, and I'd love to make this conversational and open it up for the colleagues here. I do feel comfortable leaving that bit out just because it is already present and kind of reiterating something that's already present in the development agreement.
What do you mean take it out?
I said I'm not
You
really
mean
comfortable
not reinforcing it, but rather that it stays there.
It's staying there, and I feel comfortable leaving the reinforcement part of it out, given that it's already present.
No, it's just verbal. I'm just saying it. There's no intent to put it in any writing.
Yeah, I think we can have a conversation, a constructive conversation around removal of the minor adjustment language. That would be something that I'm open to. But I think, it'd be important to get the feedback of the rest of the commission on that. As an entire body, we make decisions. I also just want to add really quickly, a public commenter did bring up public safety issues with this intersection, and as a resident of the Sunset Strip, I'm acutely sensitive to that because this is a very dangerous pedestrian intersection. I think that when we look at these projects and we see the development agreement that has $500,000 in pedestrian streetscape enhancements, we see some of these public benefits that are coming as a result of these projects. It's really encouraging to see that because now we have city staff working on a solution to that intersection that will make it more walkable and make it more safe for drivers and for pedestrians. So I do just want to highlight that really quickly. Also just want to touch on, there is a condition in this resolution that we have discussed at length here earlier in the evening that has a very broad issue resolution clause, to where if there is any issue that comes up, whether that be lighting or a 3D image creating a public safety risk or anything to that extent, that this condition that's ever present in this resolution would give the city the ability to go in and mitigate it. And then it also explicitly requires the applicant or the operator to adhere to the mitigation desires of the city. So I think that when we talk about concerns, yes, we are in new territory. Yes, this is our first 3D billboard in the city. I have done a thorough review of the resolution's conditions, and I've double-checked them, and I feel really comfortable with some of the protections and safeguards to address some of the concerns that you've raised. But I will say that, you know, just to let everyone know where we're at and to keep an open conversation, I'd love to hear from our other colleagues. I personally agree with Commissioner Hoopengarner that maybe we should consider, as a body, a relook at the language around a minor what constitutes a minor adjustment. I do agree with you and concur, Commissioner Hoopengarner. But I would love to hear from the rest of the colleagues on where we would be at with something like that.
Does anyone else want to share their thoughts and deliberation now? Commissioner Edwards?
I really appreciated the dynamism of this conversation because it is, billboards have been part of Sunset Strip right from the beginning, and there's been a persistent evolution of what billboards are, and it's fascinating if you ever go through the history of it and read, you know, what people had to say for and against billboards. But it is an embedded part of our culture, so I acknowledge that. Also, I acknowledge that change can be a challenge. Not bad, not good, just a challenge. And I have faith in the fact that we did have a public process by which the signage policy was created. There was lots of opportunity for input from the community over time, and that there's always been the understanding that what was created is not something that's going to be fixed in stone, that is something that frames a conversation, but the conversation is going to be ongoing. That's what we have, you know, as I understand it, those variables by which something has to, who's going to exceed the existing standardized threshold, has to then offer something extraordinary. And so I appreciate this sign, what they're proposing to do. I appreciate the fact that it's also not like some of those other signs they showed were just massive. This one is, you know, scaled for the community, so I really appreciate that. And my understanding is, being a new person up here, that intersection is not what's being addressed today. It's just a consistent or persistent variable that is something the city is going to be addressing in the future, in the very near future. So it really comes down more about the history of that intersection, and maybe it was designed under a different time, and now that, you know, conditions have changed, we need better, and we have a better understanding of what is good design. So it's my understanding we're looking into making better design so we have greater safety. And so I don't think, for me personally, my experience has been, and I've looked at this before, is that billboards are necessarily a problem. It's really just people just not paying attention, as one of the commenters made. So I agree with that. And then something that was said by one of my fellow commissioners is that challenge and that tension of how much legislation and policy can you create to manage human behavior. And I think we are striving to meet and be at that, no pun intended, at that intersection. And I think we're thriving to achieve that. So I personally don't think the billboard is the issue. I think the billboard creates an opportunity for us to improve that intersection, add life to that intersection, because I believe the more people you have at that intersection, that whole area, is that at some point, hopefully, from my perspective, that we can actually start narrowing traffic and make it more pedestrian oriented, and we have the tools to make it, and the justification for it to be transportation oriented. And so I'm leaning towards supporting this project, and I agree with some of my, the commissioners with some of the conditions we're talking about, like the 33%. And I appreciate what Commissioner Amato said about the clause that is our catch-all clause, that we just have to rely on the community and rely on staff that we catch those sooner rather than later and have a conversation about how we can then address the issue. So I'm done with my soliloquy. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Jones?
Sure, I'm going to keep my comments pretty brief. First, I do want to address, because this came up with the Sterling project too, you know, we're just at a very different juncture now than we were when Sassy saw this 2.5 years ago. Almost 3 years ago at this point. But that doesn't change the merits of the project, of the billboard, or its, relationship to the streetscape. I think I'm generally inclined to, recommend that we move this forward to council. But as per my note about Sterling, and I think Jennifer had mentioned this at our last meeting, but the staff is starting to look into, requiring the potential for requiring neighborhood meetings and community meetings, because I think that, as this grows and as it becomes apparent, kind of the cumulative effect that these billboards are going to have kind of on the physical environment, that we need to make sure that the community is involved. So I do want to acknowledge that, and I believe Ellen Evans and Aaron Kamen both spoke to that this evening. Insofar as and I think per my note about cumulative effect, I don't so much know that, I'm a little bit torn about this, and we can talk about it if my colleagues think that it merits discussion, but I think rather than on a per project basis, I think what I'm most concerned about, and I've voiced this at meetings before, is being able to assess the cumulative effects of a group of billboards that were, approved disparately, because that's our process, in a way that, benefits the communities, so that we can see how these things look all together. It doesn't mean that we couldn't, check in on projects periodically or condition something like that. I'm not necessarily opposed to that. But I think what I'm most interested in is not what this is going to look like on its own, but also what it's going to look like when, we're seeing it in kind of the context of all of the projects that we've approved. I mean, especially in this area, because again, we did just move Sterling forward to council. I am in agreement with Commissioner Hoopengarner about the 33%. That's an excellent point, and one well taken. And as someone who works in advertising, this is prime real estate. These are perms and, high revenue billboards, and opportunities for purchase space. So I would be very much open to figuring out if we want to remove it or reduce it, or change the language, or all of those things. But I think those are my comments as of right now. Again, I think the project itself, I'm very much in support of, and I do think we need to work out some of the details. And again, I'm open to further discussion on that. Those are my comments.
Thank you. Commissioner Gregoire?
I don't need to repeat what my fellow commissioners have said. I'm pretty excited about this project. I think this media cube could be a fabulous addition to the community. Obviously, I share the community's concerns about safety at this intersection, but I'm happy that the city is going to work at addressing the safety concerns and redesigning this intersection. I'm not sure I was fully following the concern about the revenue would be decreased as a result of it being 3D. I think there's a small reduction to the minimum annual guaranteed payment for 3D programming, but my sense is that it's going to be made up in the revenue share payment. Obviously, they will get more revenue for 3D content. So I'm assuming it's going to be made up in the revenue share payment. Someone would have to do that math for me and show me that that's not the case, but I guess I'm not overly concerned about that. With respect to the 33%, I'm not sure what the solution to that is. It does seem to me 33% is more than a a minor change. I don't know what the solution is to that. I don't know if staff can give us their thoughts on something that might be more reasonable. I don't want to just assign 10% or 20% as just out of the blue. But yeah, I'd appreciate staff's guidance on how we might change that. That's all I have at this time.
That's been a topic that everyone's relating right now, so I am curious if staff has a take on this question.
Thank you, Acting Chair. So I did just want to note, since there has been a lot of discussion and consistent with sort of what Ms. Alkire was describing, the 33% does come from the city signage policy. So Section 4C5 little c talks about an existing billboard being able to add 33% of new sign area, with the caveat that that's up to a maximum area of 1,200 square feet per face. So I did want to provide just a little more clarity on that. That's dimension of that language and where it comes from in our signage policy. I think to the extent there's discussion from the commission, the commission certainly empowered to consider what sort of recommendation it would want to make up to the city council, who's the body sort of tasked with the negotiation associated with the terms of the development agreement. So I do think there's an opportunity for discussion and sort of consideration of that point, but I just wanted to provide a little more context on sort of the signage policy itself.
Okay, thank you. Can you just repeat that for 1 minute, because I tried to pay attention, but I think it's getting late. So you said up to a maximum area of 1,200 square feet per face. Are you referring to the additional amount, or the sign, or the total? What's
Sorry, let me just read from the policy. It says, and this is within the section regarding modifications of existing signs, but it looks like it's specific to non-digital signs within our policy. But the language in the policy says an existing billboard may add 33% of new sign area up to a maximum area of 1,200 square feet per face. Approval of such increases shall be limited to once every 36 months. That's the full subsection where I think this language sort of comes from, and why it's probably shown up in previous development agreements in the past. So I mention it only as context for where I assume that language has come from historically, and I think the Planning Commission's empowered to sort of look at the specific impacts of this project and make a recommendation for the City Council to consider, you know, that provision and the negotiation associated with the terms of the development agreement.
Commissioner Edwards?
Yes, follow-up question to that. So you said once every 36 months.
Yeah, and Commissioner Edwards, so the language I read about 33%, it is specific to non-digital signs, but I provide it just as background because I think that is where the 33% number comes from historically. And that's probably why it's shown up in past development agreements.
So for clarification, it's showing up in this document, but it's applicable to non-digital signs originally.
So the policy has a provision for 33% addition to an existing sign. And what happened when these development agreements were being negotiated seems to be, and none of us were in that room at that time, so it seems to be that provision was sort of carried forward into these development agreements. That provision does not apply to this sign because the sign is digital, but it's pulled from there. So if the commission wanted to recommend that provision be removed, the commission can recommend that. We can keep other things like relocation and reorientation or height adjustments as minor, but we can say a change to the size. You can lower the percentage if you want to allow some change, but any change to the size could be not considered a minor change going forward. That could be the recommendation of the body.
Oh, just last follow-up, I apologize.
No, please.
So it says once every 36 months, so in 72 months, they could double the size?
No, so that 36-month provision is not in the DA, so let's not worry about that
Okay.
at this moment.
Okay.
Commissioner Jones, did you have something?
Yeah, just to make sure that my math is mathing here, if the maximum per the old policy, which we're saying doesn't apply to the new, this anyway, because it's a digital sign, is up to 1,200 feet, the square footage of this billboard is already 2,525 square feet, so it's essentially moot anyway, right?
It would be if that provision applied to this sign, but that provision doesn't apply to this sign.
Okay.
Only the provision in the DA does, and it doesn't have that 1,200 square feet.
Okay.
So that's the problem with this particular provision, is that it has no limits. The policy has a limit, but the DA, as written, doesn't have a limit. So, to your point, let me ask my colleagues, this is a very static thing. I can't imagine you changing the design. I mean, it's a very specific cube that tweaks out and is, proportional to the building, and in fact, any change you made would screw up the beautiful proportionality that you have. So I guess the question is, can we just strike the paragraph and be done with it?
I would support striking the paragraph and being done with it.
And just to be clear, it would be a recommendation to council as the sort of negotiating body associated with that.
And I think that a good alternative approach would be strike the paragraph recommendation, right? And if not strike the paragraph, maybe there's an opportunity for at least public notification or planning commission notification in the event that there is a significant increase or any increase.
Or that it has to go through planning commission review, because it would be a substantive change to the building and the design.
Okay.
Do you want to?
I mean, you all are doing a great job making it easy for me right now. So I really don't have a lot to contribute or add right now. Just to get it out really quick, I do think this project is a wonderful design. There's been a lot of thought into it. Just again, I think we're all talking about the same concerns. So I don't have anything to add there other than I just want to make sure that we're hitting those. And the only other real comment I would have, just from a design standpoint, a couple of things. So we really are realizing that we're getting some form of a Shibuya crossing, for, I don't know, any other better sort of analogy in this area. So I guess my question to city staff is, how can we leverage this to be special in the best possible way? Something to think about that kind of overreaches beyond some of what we're looking at right now. Other than that, I think we have discussed a little bit of concern about, the potential distraction of 3D signage. It seems like there is traffic at Times Square in that reference, and even in downtown LA. And I think it's hard for us here to somehow quantify or put a metric on that. So the only concern I would have is, perhaps something could be added in an amendment. I'm not sure if I even feel like it needs to be, but could be added to, report back on any traffic-related issues or something like that. There's a lot of measures already in place to actively seek out resolution if there's an issue baked into the agreement. So I don't think there's a lot to add there, but traffic does seem to be a concern and distractions, and I don't know how we can make a decision on frame rates or something like that here today, other than to maybe get some statistics that come back so that we're aware if there's an issue, or to hold a little additional layer of accountability. But otherwise, I'll let my colleagues continue to deliberate. I think Commissioner Edwards had his hand up.
Oh, just quickly to add to what you're saying is that, from my perspective, I hear what you're saying about better understanding and trying to quantify any potential impacts. I would not suggest that we do it on a project-by-project basis, like put it on this project or any other project, but maybe as a city, since this is to go to the cumulative impact, is that we have world-class universities. I don't know why we can't figure out some way to work with one of them to do some kind of analysis of what is unique to the city of West Hollywood when it comes to our signage, and try to better understand, because I saw that section from Fears and Piers where there was some studies, but they weren't done here. And since we are unique, I think any kind of study would have to take into consideration the particular, uniqueness and quality of Sunset Strip that can give us a better and fairer understanding of what, how can our public safety concerns be addressed?
Yeah, and my only suggestion was just that if there was any interest to put it out there of like getting some sort of report back. There's been no traffic incidents in the last 3 months, or there's been 2 or something like that, and that's all.
If I could add on the traffic matter before we move into something else, I will just highlight that there is a traffic transportation commission at the city level. I think, this is a great discussion. I'm glad we're having it. I do think, to Commissioner Edwards' point, that it is a much broader issue beyond this project that we're here to make a decision on and make recommendations to the council on tonight. So I think that to the extent possible, we can move forward and maybe discuss that at a later time as a body might be appropriate. If it's okay with you, Chair, Acting Chair?
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Commissioner.
Was there another comment?
Hoopengarner has.
Yeah, I thank you for discussing that whole 33%. There's this other piece, and I just don't want to beat this to death, but I think it's important, and it's important for the applicant, is this business about the 8-second transition. That relates to the static digital billboards. And as it's written currently in the development agreement, I see it as limiting the 3D ability of this billboard. So my concern is that it's not appropriate for this project. What is appropriate, I'm not sure, but I would hate for it to be limiting and turn this project back into 2D static billboards effectively because of that 8-second transition.
I'd like to address the 8-second transition. There's static boards have to have a campaign for 4 weeks.
Oh yeah, I'm using the wrong words. I mean, but it's static in the sense that if it's a picture, and then there's an 8-second transition, and then 8 seconds later you can have another picture.
So that would be their choice to do a static campaign, but they're allowed full motion animation, and if they want to go, an 8-second ad, then another one, that would be their choice. I don't think they would, but I mean, that's up to the operator.
But wasn't that in the DA that there was a limitation on the 8-second transition?
Well, if they're showing a static image, they have to hold it for 8 seconds.
It's a minimum, right?
Minimum of 8 seconds.
So it's a floor of 8 seconds.
But how would you differentiate that between an image that's blending and moving and is 3-dimensional?
In the industry, a static is a static campaign, and then you have full motion digital. And to your question, I can't answer how you distinguish them, but I think you know it when you see it.
Okay, so how does the 3 edits per second tie into that in terms of the transitions necessary in terms of a traditional 3D animation design?
I can't answer that. I don't have that expertise.
Okay. See, these are the questions that I'm concerned that are actually limiting to the applicant and the ability to do the 3-dimensional design. Actually, when this first came to SASE, I had an idea for these billboards are all supposed to be tied together, right? So that we can have images work together and art projects work together. And I actually had a sort of an epiphany of a murmuration of starlings that move together and fly together, thousands of starlings. Imagine them flying through this billboard and down to the next billboard and then down to the next billboard and flying up and down the boulevard.
Sure. We're discussing that concept with our arts group. It's the sunset moment, and all the billboards will be tied together. So I think you're 100% correct that could be the future.
So that's back to making sure that our development agreement doesn't limit our creativity and our ability
Is there
to do.
is there a proposal to modify, or I'm actually looking for the seconds in which I'm not sure which agreement we're talking about, if I were being honest.
I've got so many notes here, I've
Okay.
lost track of where it's all referenced.
Commissioner
so.
Hoopengarner, if I may add just a little flavor here. My understanding is that the 8-second transition time is the floor, right? And if you're an advertiser, I imagine, I'm not an advertising expert like Commissioner Jones, but if you're an advertiser, I imagine you're going to want your advertisement up there longer than 8 seconds. And it being a floor, not a limitation, I don't really see that. I don't necessarily see that concern. But for whatever it's worth, if the chair will entertain a motion, I'd like to make a motion for the commission to react to, and then I am always open to friendly amendments. Again, we're making decisions as a body here.
Yeah. So there's a potential motion. Does anyone have anything they want to say before Commissioner Matos proposes the motion? No? Okay. Yes, please.
So my motion is going to be, first of all, to make a recommendation to Commissioner Hoopengarner's point to remove the minor changes provision 6.2.1 letter C. Recommendation to council to have letter C, which reads a square footage adjustment of up to 33%, which increase shall not be subject to section 4.12 of this agreement. We recommend removal of that. And then the second recommendation, if the colleagues would entertain it, is if the recommendation would be if that is not removed, some form of public notification or planning commission notification of an increased size or a minor change amendment.
Then it wouldn't fall under minor change because minor change is administrative. That's the only trick with that. I like where you're headed, but minor change in that whole paragraph is all about administrative changes. And so if it were to come back to planning, it would become a different thing.
Yeah, it would. So it would be a notification that there would be an administrative approval being done. And that's only in the event that there isn't an adoption of our recommendation to remove section C, right? So those are the two thoughts that I have up front. My motion would be to move it forward with those changes. I am open to friendly amendments if there is one. And obviously would be interested in entertaining a second.
Does your motion also include staff's modification? I think they had one, right? One update that was presented?
Correct.
The 20 seconds, I believe. And
yes, it was the amendment read into the record to section 3.11 of resolution. I've got it somewhere. Of resolution 231544. That was read into the record as part of staff's recommendation.
But yeah, my motion also includes that.
And I second.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Any final discussion, or should we call a vote?
Would you be amenable to an amendment that would incorporate the language of the rules in the Exhibit D to be included explicitly in the development agreement?
I'm sorry, what are we referencing?
It's really very hard to read because it's teeny tiny in your package. It's the ecology garden enhancements, and it's got 7 points and then another 6 points, some of which are germane and some of which are not. But for example, very specifically, it says, like in item number 6, both the ecology garden area and any seating features or components in the public right-of-way shall be fully irrigated, illuminated, and maintained regularly by the applicant team at all times. But it's not called out explicitly as such in the development agreement. And so that's just an example of the things that I'm concerned I had to screenshot it and blow it up to even read it. And so I'm afraid of those kinds of things going missing in the explicit language of the development agreement. Yes, it is an attachment to the development agreement, but it's next to impossible to read.
Can we get staff clarification on whether or not that attachment actually stands as a requirement?
Yes, it stands as, all the exhibits stand as a requirement to the development agreement.
Correct. Okay, so that was my understanding. So for that reason, Commissioner Hoopengardner, I would respectfully decline the amendment.
I appreciate that, and I will just make the point that we've had this experience in the past where things were buried in exhibits, et cetera, and as a result, they were not adhered to, and it became a big deal, and it was an enforcement action, and I'm just trying to eliminate those issues because then it becomes very clear because it's in the DA.
We could actually, I'd be open to, again, we make decisions as a body, hearing from the colleagues on what their thoughts are.
Okay, so maybe a quick temperature check to see if anyone has any thoughts that might make Commissioner Matos modify his motion slightly. Anyone? Any thoughts on this topic?
I agree with Commissioner Matos. It's not necessary.
Yeah, it's attached. So by definition, it is part of the development agreement. Even if you put it inside the development agreement, it doesn't change the fact that it could be overlooked just because. I mean, by definition, it is part of the development agreements, I understand it. So whether you put it in or out.
I guess the concern is that it won't be read, so the question is if there should be more emphasis. I'm kind of in between right now. I don't have but I'm curious if that helps.
Yes,
frame.
it is still enforceable. I agree 100%. We've experienced it in the city many times where things that were buried in little tiny attachments didn't get addressed, and they became a big deal, and it became an enforcement issue, and it became a lot more work than was necessary. That's my only point.
Well, I think Commissioner Matos, you have the. I don't know if you want to modify your motion or if someone wants. No.
My modifications recommendation would be higher font.
It was also just for everyone's, we were sent a digital copy of this for the, I mean, I'm looking at it on my computer right now and it's legible. So, I mean, there's also a due diligence that we're, I would like to give council the benefit of the doubt that they would be doing their due diligence and reading through all of the attachments and exhibits included with the DA itself.
Correct. So your inclination, Commissioner Jones, is to be clear, is to move it forward, the motion forward as is?
Yes.
Okay. So we've discussed it as a body, and I would recommend that we move it forward without the change, respectfully.
Okay,
but because it is already in the development agreement as an attachment, for those reasons.
Okay, and then so does it stand the motion and the second?
Yes.
Commissioner Edwards, you're still seconding that motion?
Yes.
Okay. Any final thoughts or actions before we take this to vote? I'm not hearing any, so let's vote.
I'll read it one more time into the record just for clarity purposes. So
thank you.
The motion from Commissioner Matos, seconded by Commissioner Matos was, I'm sorry, I think I said Matos twice. The motion that Commissioner Matos made, seconded by Commissioner Edwards, was a recommendation to move staff's recommended approval forward to council with the modification to the condition of approval read into the record and recommended by staff, with a recommendation that council consider the removal of section 621C of the development agreement, or if council is not in favor of its removal, some sort of public notification or planning commission review if there's going to be an increase in the square footage to the size contemplated by that section.
Yes, that's the motion.
And the second from Commissioner Edwards still stands? Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Hoopengardner, please.
I think Commissioner Hoopengardner is the. Mine froze earlier too.
I've pushed the button and it's not
It happened to me
cooperating.
last time.
Try again, or do we just say, do you want to state?
Well, since our vote's missing electronically, digitally, I'll just do a voice call.
Okay.
Commissioner Matos.
Yes.
Commissioner Jones.
Yes.
Commissioner Hoopengarner.
Yes.
Commissioner Gregoire.
Yes.
Commissioner Edwards.
Yes.
Vice Chair Lombardi.
Yes.
And the motion passes, noting 5 ayes, I'm sorry, 6 ayes, and Chair Carvalero is recused from this item. There is no appeal process. This is a recommendation going forward to the City Council.
Thank you. Just a few more things to speed through. Item 12, no business. We have already discussed items 13, 14, and 15. And public comment, item 16.
We have no public comment.
Okay, no public comment. Item 17 was already discussed. So that means we can now adjourn this meeting. The next Planning Commission meeting